Cheers, Sushil.
Cheers, Ramsey.
All right, welcome to episode 1 of Locked In with Ramsey Kalani.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you for imprisoning me in this space.
Thank you for coming on, Sushil.
Yeah.
So I guess to start off for everyone, we're going to talk about why I'm doing this podcast. And I think you understand the vision pretty well. Actually, I'm curious, what is your understanding of the vision? Like, why do you think I'm doing this podcast?
You know, I think you're doing this because I think you see like a generation of just lost dudes out there who kind of don't know what life is about in modernity. And, you know, the only way to figure that out is if you talk about it, right, in a more productive setting.
Yeah.
Rather than reacting to the culture war, right? I think that's what you're thinking about.
Yeah, I guess, I want to give these lost guys a vision, right?
Yeah.
Because I think part of it is I used to be a lost guy. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing in my life. Like, I guess there had been a path people laid out for me, and I was like, I will follow exactly what you gave for me. But, like, because I didn't care about doing it, I didn't do anything more than that. And I wasn't excited to do it. So I just did exactly that because people told me to and no more. And, like, there was nothing I wanted there, right? And then, luckily, I figured out at some point how to live, like, a happy and good life. And now I am. And I think, I met you earlier in the start of that journey, and I'm glad we made it to this podcast together. I think you're doing a lot better, too.
Oh, man, I'm doing way better than I have before. Yeah. No, I totally see where you're coming from. Like, you're growing up, and however you're being raised, there is kind of a path that you're put on.
Yeah. Right?
There's some sort of railway tracks, but there aren't going to be railway tracks for the rest of your journey. And if you're just kind of following the old railway tracks, you're not necessarily going to be happy, right?
Well, I think part of the problem, too, is the old railway tracks don't work anymore.
That, too.
They're outdated, right? Yeah, they're outdated. The old railway track is like, you get a job, you get a wife, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids, and, like, I guess that still works for some people, but, like, so much has changed culturally and economically and, like, just overall in the world. So much has changed that, like, that doesn't... I think a lot of people don't want that anymore, too, or, like, it doesn't appeal to them. Like, I think it kind of appealed to me, but I was like, why? Actually, it didn't appeal to me. I know I didn't want to have kids for so long, and I'm still, like, iffy about that. But, like, so it's like the standard rail track that was there. I was like, I don't know, it's not exciting to me, like, caring for my family. Like, I don't know, my dad cared for my family, and it was fine, I guess. And then, like, I'm gonna do that again, and what's the point, right? Like, we've achieved, like people overall have stuff and safety, and maybe recently we have a little bit less of that, but it's like, and then what? Like, why am I doing this?
I think that's the question, like, everybody's stuck at, though.
Yeah.
Everybody is at that, then what?
Yeah.
But I think I know, like, I used to be stuck at the parts before the then what that you explained, where you have all these traditional impositions, traditional cultural impositions upon you. And at a certain point, you're like, well, is this for me? Is this not for me? And you do obviously make your own decision. And of course, like, those decisions are almost entirely predicated on the social and cultural situation that you're in, right? My parents, they're from India, right? So the railway tracks they were interested in are different, perhaps, than the railway track that your parents were interested in.
I think they were pretty similar.
I think as far as immigrant experience goes, they're probably dissimilar. That's why we're both in tech.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, your parents push you towards a good job, and then...
And I think, honestly, like, that's the best decision, right? Like, having a good economic founding, honestly, is the best decision to take.
It is good,
right? Yeah. And I think, honestly, the part that people get stuck at is like, well, the railway tracks left by culture, like, they no longer exist, right? And as you were explaining, they no longer exist because of all these different cultural changes. And I mean, the way I look at it is this. I think those were like necessary parts of the culture back in the day, right? Like the whole purpose of humanity is to, and life is to survive, right?
Yeah.
So like you need,
Yeah.
like you need, the barest thing you can do if you do not have, abundance in your life is, get yourself a wife, raise some children,
Yeah.
make sure that they also live,
Yeah.
right? And they live a good life. And that is like an important track. If you can get on that track and if that's something that like you want to do, great. I say do it. Honestly, I also would like that as well. But I think modernity offers a space where even if you are doing those very specific things, right, the level of abundance given to you is something I think that, the minds that we evolved with are still not used to.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I think you're still going to fall into that last man syndrome, right? Like, even like you raise your kids and they're like, 10, 12, or 13, right? You're going to have a lot more free time, right? What are you going to do with that free time, right? You're not just going to be dedicating it all to your kids, and there's a lot more abundance now. You might not have to spend as much time working.
Well, I think even
to
before
get the
you
same
think about
level of food,
Yeah.
or requirements to keep your household going.
Well, I think like even before you get to the point where you have kids, like I think for me when I was growing up, it's like because I grew up with like relative to like our ancestors abundance.
Yeah.
Right? On the one hand, like it almost seemed too easy to get abundance. Like my parents had set me up well.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're gonna get a job and you're gonna make money and you're gonna have kids and it's all gonna work out perfectly.
Yeah.
And like it hasn't worked out, perfectly always, but like it was almost like the path they set me up for was like the getting that bare minimum was so easy that I didn't want to do it and I had no motivation to do it, so it became harder. But then it was so it was also too hard.
Yeah.
It was too hard to do it because I was like, why am I even doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because what's the point? And then I have kids like you were saying, and then the kids grow up, and then what? Like what am I doing here? And then they live the same life as me, I guess.
Yeah.
And then
it's like at a certain point you're like, you got to break the cycle.
Yeah. Well, like what's the point of the cycle? What are we doing here?
Yeah. Honestly, that is indeed the question. Right? Like, man.
So I think you brought up
that is the last man.
The last man concept. I think you should explain it for people that haven't heard it before.
Well,
because what we're talking
it comes from two places, right? But specifically Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche spoke about the concept of the last man, and this is a man who does not have religion anymore in their lives. And, society has progressed enough that, they might not even need religion, rationality has taken over, but primarily the level of abundance provided by society and the economy makes it so that people, and the last man is not just a man, it is kind of used in a gender neutral way.
It's a concept. It's an idea.
It could be a man or a woman, but it is somebody that in that sort of space goes for the smaller comforts, right? It's the small comforts that, provide that dopamine rush, that serotonin, and then you're just kind of okay with life. And you're always going to be sitting in that space where your caveman mind is satiated, right? And you're always going to kind of be ignoring that inner voice that's telling you that, hey, maybe you should do something a little bit more. And I think that is the trap of the last man.
Yeah, I think that's why we're unsatisfied.
Exactly.
It's like when you at a certain point, I guess getting more material comforts is not satisfying anymore. Like if you don't have a house and you get a house, it's like holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, I fulfilled my Maslow's hierarchy, but like
yeah,
you have a house and you get a bigger house, like it's nice, but it's not like
it's not gonna like fill that hole.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Right. And I feel like there's so many people are just not. The hole's empty. They don't know what to do with their lives because like they have a house, or maybe they just like even they grew up with a house, right?
Yeah.
And housing is worse now. It's weird. Then like on the one hand, it's hard to get a house now, but on the other hand, it's almost like I don't even care. Like I used to, I grew up with a house.
Yeah.
And I saw what it was like, and it's like, and what if I can't get a house now? It's like, you know what? I don't like. Why do I even want that? Like I had it. It was fine. It didn't satisfy me.
I think that explains it for like people that already had houses, right? We're probably okay with like going with some smaller places, but I think generally people do want to see that like progression curve.
Yeah.
Right? Like life is a game.
Yeah.
And people will be less prone to lashing out at other people if they feel as if the game they're playing is fair. And obviously I think that's the main reason why we're really focused on the housing crisis.
Yeah.
I think the housing crisis is like, for us, without the housing crisis, we would be the last man. Because we do we don't have that external mission.
We're both housing crisis activists.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, still an external mission.
Yeah.
Right? It's not something that is internal to us.
Yeah, we have something meaningful to do, right?
It is not, but at the same time, it's not internally, like, it's internally satisfying insofar as we get the wins and it feels good to get those wins and we're helping other people. And that's why it feels good. But the biggest problem is that it's still this external thing, right? It is still an attachment to this external thing that gives us meaning.
Yeah.
And it's not really meaning that comes from from as an intrinsic motivator, right? And I think maybe like perhaps because we're justice oriented, that is the intrinsic motivator. But I think like once, like say if you solve the housing crisis, then what?
Yeah, then what?
Right?
I mean, that's something I've been thinking about.
Right. What happens to you then? What would you do?
Well, so, like, I think where I've landed on this is that, at least for me, like, that... Because you made a difference between, like, internal and external meaning. I think, to me, that is internal meaning.
Yeah.
Because everything that you can do is external.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you're just in a room on your own and you're meditating or something, I feel like you're not going to get to meaning. To me, what I've found is that, like, meaning is when you do something that you want to do, almost. But it's not something that you want to do because of, like, primal desire. It's something that you want to do. Something that Ramsey wants to do. Yeah. Right? It's not something that Ramsey's stomach wants me to do to go find food. Right?
It's like what you want to... It's
not what the monkey wants to do.
It's not what the monkey wants to do. It is what Ramsey himself wants to do. Yeah.
No. Right? And, like, so to me, that is that, like, you know, helping solve the housing crisis right now. But I think, like, I don't know what's going to come in the future, and I don't know what's going to happen once we solve the housing crisis. Hopefully, you know, assuming we do in our lifetimes. I think we will. But... let's say I do that. I'm like, man, I did it. I accomplished my goals, and then I think if I'm in tune with myself and I do the things that we've talked about for years in terms of like you know, learning how to be a better people and find out what our true desire is, then I think I will find something to do that came up. I mean, like this podcast. Right? Yeah. Like we're sitting here in front of a microphone now, and like. I mean, the housing crisis is not done, but I was like, you know what? I think I need to
get started on that next crisis.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I think it's just it's such a big crisis. Even if the housing crisis is solved, like I think
you can have people without meaning.
Yeah, and I think men specifically, they don't know what to do with themselves, and like in so many ways, like I think not just like there's a sense of like it's hard to work on your career. Right, and there's a sense of like, you know, it's hard to find a job, and I think like the big ones to me though are like that main source of meaning that we're talking about of like why am I even working this job, and dating, and I think like people are not, you know, telling men like about those, and I think the only people that are people that have bad motivations and are not like actually interested in people's like they're speaking to people's needs as a source of like, oh, like come and listen to like specifically what am I trying to say?
I think like people's cave mind desires.
Yeah.
Right? They're speaking to that as a source of engagement farming.
Yeah, it's engagement farming.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just engagement
farming.
farming.
To get views and clicks.
And the easiest engagement farming you can do is to appeal to people's more base impulses.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, you know, what the material mind wants to do.
Yeah.
right? Which is just ensure the caveman can survive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's like, so when you don't have, the big house or something, and you look at somebody with the big house, that can be really appealing.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know, it's like, I feel like there's a lot of things going on here.
I want you to dig deep. What's the, can you explain in detail?
Not I guess necessarily personally, but so I feel like there's so many different crises of meaning.
Yeah.
That are all bound up in the same spot. There's what do I do with my life?
Yeah.
There's I don't have enough material possessions. I don't have as much as I thought I would by now, or as much as my parents did. And why can't I have that?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a sense of what am I even going to do if I get those material possessions? Yeah. Right? But so even if maybe you have a house as big as your parents, right? That doesn't feel fulfilling anymore. Or I don't know, maybe you have a car that's as nice as your parents ever had, right? But it doesn't feel nice enough because there's a hole left inside of you, right? And so you're well, someone said this is how I can get an even nicer car. Maybe I should go do that. Maybe then I'll feel better. If I will say
I do want a nice car.
You want a nice car?
That'd be nice, yeah.
Which nice car do you want?
I'll be real with you. I think either...
Just a car, Sushil.
No, dude. The thing that frustrates me about... The things that frustrate me about electric vehicles is that there's no, aside from Tesla, there's no, muscle car-looking vehicle. Okay. There's no, not a lot of sports car-looking vehicles. And those are the kind of cars I like. But, yeah, I'd like to have a nice car.
Do you have a car?
I sold my car, actually.
No, do you have a car that you dream about at night?
Look, there's only one car at a base level, right, in the absence of a really nice car that matters to me, and it's called a Honda Civic.
I do like a Honda Civic.
Honda Civics are nice. But the 2017 one, that's the perfect.
But anyway, back to...
I wanted to ask you a question,
even if you get the Honda Civic, it's not going to...
Yeah. It's not going to fill in that hole.
It's not going to fill that hole.
But I do want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
When it comes to meaning, what gives you more meaning as far as, say, if you purchase these, material items or you go on a journey? The question is, is it talking about the cool material things you have, or is it the story you want to tell? Or the story you're able to tell? What's in that moment when you're interacting with somebody, telling them about your life? Yeah. Right? What I think in that moment gives you the most meaning of
I think it's not even about the material things.
Yeah.
The thing that I actually feel meaningful. It's about how did I what was the journey to make myself feel better? And I think there's a lot of different ways that I felt better. And maybe there was a way that I made myself feel better so I could get more material things. Maybe there's I was doing something at work that was unsatisfying, and I was you know what, let's not operate that way anymore. Now I do something at work, and now I'm able to be work more in a more satisfying, confident way.
Yeah.
Right, and to me it's the process of getting there, and then now that I'm confident about my work, doing my work confidently. So it's not about this is not about the reward. It's about what I'm doing. That's what I like sharing. Is the process, and teaching other people, be look, you can be like this too. You can trust. I was fucked at work. I was procrastinating my stuff to the last minute, and you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
As an example.
It's a good example because I don't think people really know that, having material abundance in particular is a function of clearing your own gunk, right?
Continue.
If you're in that situation where you do not feel as if your job is for you, you're not going to progress very far. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I was like that for so long. I don't know why I'm doing this.
Exactly, but you're going to remain stuck. You're going to remain bored. And as long as you're not remaining challenged, you don't have that will to live anymore. Right?
Basically.
And then I think as men, what men need is the challenge, right? They need such a challenge that they can believe themselves, that they can accomplish it. But I think not so much of a challenge that it feels impossible to look at it. Right? And I think finding that, wherever you're at, I think finding that sweet spot. and by wherever you're at, I mean wherever you're at materially in terms of like wealth and finances, and wherever you are at mentally, right? As like, you know, your own headspace. But if you can, I think, find that challenging thing, that's ideally not, you know, a gaming addiction. You can really, you can climb, right? You can. It's like life offers its own elo, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you can climb the ranks.
There's a lot of ranks, and challenges and problems to solve.
Yeah.
But in life, but I want to go back to that because, like, I think for me, it's not like I didn't have challenges when I was younger. Like, I had a lot of challenges that people are like, but I didn't want to. I don't know exactly the answer, but like it was, I didn't want to do them. Like they felt externally imposed on me. Yeah. Right? It wasn't like I want, and even like my education, it was like I tried to find something that I wanted to do, but like it still felt like it was someone else told me to do it. And maybe that's a very immigrant thing, but I think it applies to a lot of things in general, where it's like maybe society told you that you have to live this way or something, or right?
Yeah, no, like a friend of mine told me that tradition is just peer pressure from from dead people, right?
Yeah.
Like, but no, I understand where you're coming from, because when I went to university, I was told, oh, you know, just go into accounting, you'll make money. Dude, I hate accounting.
Yeah.
Hate accounting.
Listen, that's a challenge, right?
It's a challenge. Yeah, exactly. It's absolutely a challenge, right? But it's like, say if you want to be an accountant, you have to read all these like GAAP rules, and you're not really having even fun with numbers, right? You know, you're just doing the most basic math, just making sure your debits equal your credits, right? And you're more in charge of making sure the numbers are structured well, rather than, you know, making the numbers do something fun. And that's why I hated accounting. And then eventually, you know, I switched to marketing, but my accounting grades were like, I hated it so much. My accounting grades for financial marketing were quite low. And so I was forced out of the program, and I was like, okay, you know what? Like, I like economics, so I just went into economics at that point. And I had a blast, because it's just not numbers anymore. It's like the numbers that you are working with are part of this greater abstraction, this greater theory. Your mind can wander a little bit more, and it's more exciting. And the challenge was one of, you know, seeing how systems work and how systems kind of come together, right? And I found that to be an absolute blast. So I think you're right. Like, you know, at a certain point, you do need a challenge that I think you vibe with internally. It's not just like anybody telling you that here's a challenge, you know, if you go up this ladder you can get somewhere, but it's like, is that ladder for you?
And I feel like that's the hardest challenge that like nobody really explains to us, is how do you find that? And I mean, like, I think the solution I found is just to try lots of different things. But I think so much of it is about, like, you got to follow the tracks that someone laid out before you. Yeah. Right? And we're not, like, encouraged to try new things. And I think, too, a lot of it is, like, a lot of modern society doesn't... I don't know. I feel like we're, like, almost less accepting of men trying new things these days.
What do you mean?
Like...
What's like an example?
Yeah. Like, I just, at least when I was growing up, I just felt like I didn't have opportunities to try new things, and I wasn't supposed to, and maybe this is like a me thing, but like I guess it felt like I had pressures from two different sides. One from like the traditional side, of like, you're not supposed to do this and you're supposed to do this, and another from the modern side of you're supposed to do this and you're not supposed to do this. And so like the range of options I had left was like very limited. So like if we look at let's say dating, because I think like a very poignant example of where men are stuck anyway. So like from the traditional side, I wasn't supposed to date much. But then on the like modern side, there's a lot of like, I think like the pressures are very different from the traditional ones.
Yeah.
Right, where we're talking about like it's just such a different experience.
It's like traditionally they're like, oh, you just find your like ride or die.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
But like in modernity, it's more like an interview process.
Yeah.
Like a lengthy interview process that you got to go through before you even find somebody, that it doesn't jive with that traditional way of looking at it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think where, because like I do have a lot of thoughts about this. They're just not coming out right now. But because I guess like where I was stuck is that, so I guess like on the one hand, yeah, I'm supposed to like go and find the one, and the other hand, like it was so hard to meet anybody.
Yeah.
Like dating apps are terrible, and then like I think part of the traditional way is like you just approach any woman in the street or something, right? And then like, or yeah, you meet her at the library or something. My parents like, yeah, I don't know, we like met like at the library. I don't know, like, and like you don't do that these days, right? That's
it's
weird.
not just that don't do that, but like I think we were just being told constantly, don't do that. It wasn't like don't do that. It was more like don't do that. Right.
Yeah. I like,
and it was a very like yelly, don't do that.
You know what? Yeah, like I think I was very yelly.
And it's so like at a certain point you're like, okay, well, if this is what the people are saying, this is what women are saying, I'm just gonna listen to the women.
Yeah.
Right. And then that
like
honestly,
I think the focus has always been like, don't do these things to women. So on the traditional side, it's like, here's how you meet women, and you need to go find someone. And I'm like, okay. And then on the modern side, the only thing I got was like, here's ways that you shouldn't approach women.
Exactly.
Right? And I'm like...
And then the only ways available were, like, honestly the worst.
Yeah, it's like apps.
Dating apps.
Right? It's apps or I don't know, just, like, not dating, right? And I think for me, like, the apps were not good. And I was like... And I think I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I was like, I guess I just won't, right? Like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
And then I was just stuck. And I think... So when you have, like, those two different pressures, like, and then with the traditional side, like, makes you feel bad about it. The fact, because we have like modern things where it's like, oh, we're accepting of everybody, but on the traditional side, it's like being a virgin is bad, right? And like, oh, you got to go like meet lots of girls, right?
Yeah.
But also like, don't go and approach girls. So it's like, what do I do, right? I'm not saying go approach girls on the street, but like, it's just you feel stuck there.
It's like all the spaces that were meant for meeting other people.
Yeah.
Where I think there was always somebody on the internet, who came up with a reason as to why you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, especially
but it was like even like at like a dive bar, right? It's like, should you like talk to women at bars? And then like you always have like somebody be like, no.
Yeah, well,
right?
I've approached women at bars in the past.
Yeah,
like, it doesn't never really worked.
No.
Right, and like maybe. But
it's like essentially, I think I've all real life locations have been, sucked away, and you can't approach women anymore.
Yeah,
and. At a certain
it feels
point,
like
it's
a mission. Like you gotta study
exactly
to learn how to.
It's like
meet women
it's
now.
so it's like I think it's incentive probably. Maybe I will say something.
Yeah.
One thing that has done for sure is like I have, friends on the left and the right.
Yeah.
And then people on the left, they're like us.
Yeah.
Right, like on the leftish side, not like. I know we're capitalists or whatever. We're not actual like socialists or
left-leaning people.
But we're like center left.
Okay.
But this is how we're gonna be approaching women because we're gonna be like, okay, let's try not to add to the harassment any one woman feels during a day.
Yeah.
Right, which is fair.
Yeah.
And then you have, oh man, like I'm hanging like when I went to BC. Some of my like buddies there were like BC conservatives.
Okay. You don't need to go into who they are.
I'm not going into who they are. No. Yeah. And like I'm not gonna like I had a good time hanging out, having beers with them, but like they're fearless. They see a woman at the bar they like, they go talk. Right? It is just it's night and day.
Is it successful for them?
Yes, it is successful for them.
Yeah.
Right? But also it's like you're the only men that are asking women out generally are, are the folks that are more right leaning.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's become a politicized thing because we politicize it on the internet.
Yeah.
Right.
Right now, dating advice is politicized.
Yeah.
It's
like
ridiculous.
dating advice became politicized, but as a result, it manifests in real life.
Yeah.
As like, oh yeah, you're only gonna get the men that watch Andrew Tate coming up to you. Like, what are you gonna do about it?
Yeah.
Right. But like that's the situation we're in today because culturally as a result.
Yeah.
And then the dating apps don't help, and I think we get too much into the weeds about the gender wars. I think that's kind of relatively ignorant in my opinion.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to look at the fact that the majority of dating apps are owned by the Match Group. It is there's a dating app monopoly that exists, and the average person does not read into monopolies.
Yeah.
So they just see the impact of dead weight loss on the economy, and as a result, society.
You're being too much of an economist.
I know.
I think
I went to school for economics, right? But like, what dead weight loss is like when a monopoly has total control over a market. Dead weight loss is quite literally all the goodies that you, within society and as a consumer, do not get, and it has downstream impacts on both you as a consumer, but also on society. And one of those downstream impacts is actually the gender wars that you see on social media, right? A lot of that does have to do with the way these apps are made. People do not think critically about the nature of the design of these apps, right? And so they think, oh, women are terrible for not responding to me, right? And then women are, in an equally bad situation, but on the other end of the pendulum, where they have 500 men and they don't know who to pick from. Yeah. And a lot of them are just, honestly, according to them, mid, which is fair, right? The way men pick, men match with women and women match with men are completely two different disjointed, heuristics. And so, and basically these apps don't help with any of that. Yeah. These apps have,
I don't want to
kill dating.
Spend too much time on the apps, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, I think to me where it comes back to is like what are we gonna do about it, right? Because we're not gonna take down the Match Group, I think. But I think at least for me, we can try. But I think for me, it's about like if you're a guy who wants to be respectful to women, how do you date? Right? I think I have some answers.
I think I have some answers too.
I think, like, nobody. I feel like no one's talking about that.
I think it's because, like, have you seen a lot of incels? Like, pictures of incels?
Like, how they look?
Yeah. A lot of them are not even bad-looking men.
Yeah, well, okay, right? So I'll say I used to, like, before it got too crazy, I used to identify with the term at one point. And I think I'm pretty attractive now, but I think it's... Part of it was, like, there was a whole journey there of getting myself out of that pit.
Exactly.
Because, like, even just, like, thinking of yourself badly, like, is a self-fulfilling cycle, right? If you think I can't meet women, then you will not meet women, right? And I think part of the problem when I was approaching people was, like, I was like, oh, this is not going to work, right? Yeah. Like, I was already going in.
You already, like, filter your behavior for that end result.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the end result you get.
Yeah. Right, and I think like part of the solution to the problem of like how do I do this is to like not worry about what's gonna happen, and like obviously that's hard, like if you're down, but is to just be like I'm just gonna I'm just like can you still approach people at bars? I think you can.
Yeah,
you said those guys were, so I mean I'm sure we should be, right? And like I think the point is to approach. Have no expectations for the outcome, and then if she says no, be respectful and leave her alone, right? But no, there's nobody. I think there's nobody talking about that. I don't know. Right? Our producer agrees. He's like, no, like I don't know. How do you approach women, man?
I will add to what you're saying. Like when you're talking about that no expectations, that is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Is a lack of attachment to the outcome. And I think for the longest time, my problem was like, oh man, career-wise, things are great, right? If I want to go higher up in a career, like I can just keep working towards it. I know what to do. I know how to kind of get up there, and I know how to rise up. And getting jobs, I think for me, like I never really had much of an issue with it because I always went into every interview process, you know, without any expectation for outcome.
Yeah.
Right? And because there was zero expectation for outcomes, I honestly, at a certain point, stopped caring about how people perceive me, and I was just myself within those meetings. So myself, flaws and all.
Yeah.
And honestly, it works.
Yeah.
That's how I got my job in big tech. You know, my previous job in big tech.
No, that works really
all
well
up to scale
for dating. Like,
and that's the thing. My perception gap had a completely because of my perception gap between career and dating. I had a completely different heuristic for dating, where I was far too attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
I was far too concerned about how I would present myself, right? And those things, those automatic behaviors, and those cognitive biases you have
you don't
towards
need to
yourself,
think about it.
right?
You're just doing it.
You shouldn't have to think about it, but it's easier said than done, right? But it is actually the thing that prevents the other person from seeing you as authentic.
Yeah.
Because you're actually not being yourself in that moment. And humans...
Yeah, I think women really
and
can
especially
tell these
women
things too.
can tell when you're being inauthentic.
Yeah.
AKA not being yourself. And so if you think you have to put up a separate persona for, women, as that is completely separate from the persona you have with your friends, you're setting yourself up with failure.
Yeah.
Right?
I think people don't even notice that they're doing this. I think for a long time I didn't know. I think that I was doing this. Right? Like I wasn't consciously doing it.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about, I'm going to put a different persona up, but I was.
But exactly. And I had to,
it's automatic.
That,
it was automatic.
Yeah.
And I think once you stop doing that, I think like the fact that you're going to a woman, like she can tell that you don't care if like she's interested in you or not.
Yeah.
That's hot, I think.
Yeah.
Because they're like, whoa, who the fuck does this guy think he is? What do you mean? I'm hot. You don't care if I'm interested in you? What do you mean? Whoa, who the fuck are you? Now I'm interested, right? Like that's how, right?
Yeah.
But you have to think, you have to genuinely not care.
Exactly.
Because you have to, right? Which is hard too.
It is hard.
Because like, I still care. Yeah. Sometimes,
It was only when I finally took the same approach as my career with dating did dating improve.
Yeah.
And even on the apps. But also number two, just make sure that your profile, is filled with stuff that is authentic to you.
Yeah.
And take good pictures. Like, holy shit, just take good pictures.
No, I think genuinely, I don't think guys understand what a good picture is. Because I think women are going around every day and they're like, they're asking like their girlfriends, like, I need you to take like 17 pictures of me until one of them is good. I gotta tell you,
it's not even a man or a woman issue. It's both.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how to take a picture, right?
I guess,
dude, there are, and I think men need to know this. There are a plethora of beautiful women on the internet, and on the dating apps that you will probably swipe left on because they just do not know how to take a photo of themselves. That's it, right? And like, just get past like, just remember, people, your phone camera. Is not a good camera for taking photos of yourself. Yeah. It will warp your face. It's not going to be your actual face, right? So that's why you feel as if if the picture doesn't represent you, and also that's happening to all other human beings on the planet as well, including women on dating apps. I think
it is more important though as a guy,
but it is way more important as a guy. You're right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Like you gotta have good pictures. You're like even like I think guys should be doing photo shoots specifically for dating apps. Like honestly, I've done two.
It seems like a good idea.
Both of them I got very good pictures of.
Yeah.
So that like the women you should do.
All right.
Genuinely, it's a good idea. Like do a few outfits, get a friend to help. Like get a friend who's gonna take the pictures of you. If you know someone with like a fancy like camera because they're like a hobbyist, right? Bring them along. Like
true.
I had one friend and he had like lights. Because, like, I don't remember what he does, but, like, he had lights that he could set up around the room and stuff to make the lighting better. And then not that you need that, like you can just go outside or something, but
I think, man, the hardest thing though is like, I'd say we probably received similar advice in the past.
Yeah.
But it's never easy to act on it, I think, because of our own thoughts about ourselves. And so, like, how do we even get past that hurdle?
Yeah.
Right? Like, if somebody's, for example, listening to this conversation and, you know, they possibly consider themselves an incel, or somebody who doesn't know how to approach women or how to, you know, engage with other people on dating apps, right? Like, how do they start?
Yeah.
And, like, how can we even tell them that it is honestly a them problem, but also at the same time, give yourself grace?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of problems out there, but, like, you can probably do better, I guess. Yeah. Well, I feel like there was two things you said. Like, one was like, where
it's
do
always
they start,
it's always
right?
like, you know,
and then
it's there's always this internalized belief that is so hard to get out of people's minds.
Yeah.
Right? Because they have convinced themselves that they are never going to, you know, find a date.
Well, and honestly, I think one of the first things that I had to do, that once it clicked in my head, dating started going better, was accepting, being okay with myself how I was today, and, like, the fact that I was not in a relationship.
Yeah.
Right? And the fact that, like, my dates were not successful, and I was like, you know what, probably the next one's not going to be successful too, and just, like, being okay with that. And just, because I think there's a lot of pressure from society, right? I think from the traditional and modern perspectives, that, like, it's bad if you can't get dates, it's bad if you can't girls, like, right? And that's, like, and there's so much media around this, and I think it's, like once, in order to, like, not care if she says yes or no to you, you have to be okay if she says no, right? You have to still, like, you have to still be confident in yourself, right? You have to be like, I know that some women are going to say no to me, and that's okay. Because I think even these guys that are like, you know, if I go to a bar and I ask out 10 women, I think I'm doing pretty good these days. But, like, a lot of them are going to say no.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I don't need all of them to say yes.
Yeah.
I only need one of them to say yes. I'm going to have a good time. Right? And, like, I only need one to say yes to get into a relationship. Right?
Yeah.
Like, wherever your goal is, you don't need a high success rate. You want some women to tell you no.
Yeah.
Because, like, that's not going to work with them.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to be good. So, like, just being like, you know what, it's okay if they say no. It's okay. Like, it's okay where I am right now, where people have said no to me. I'm okay with that. To me, that was, like, a really big first step that I think is really hard, because society beats you up so much for it, and then you beat yourself up so much for it, and, like, just getting out of that cycle where, like, you got to stop. If you're beating yourself up, then you're not going to get anywhere.
I think also, like, to your point, like, giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
I think
you're gonna make mistakes too.
People don't give themselves grace. They'll forgive other people 10 times over before they forgive themselves.
Yeah.
I think adding to your point, it's not just being okay with yourself, but I think having enough going on with your own life independent to somebody else.
That's really important,
because that will give you the structures to be okay with yourself.
Yeah, you're right.
Right? And so, like, there needs to be that as well.
Yeah.
And so, like,
which kind of goes back to the, like, last man stuff that we were talking about earlier, is that, like, like, if she says no, are you going to still be happy with your life? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Are you going to be like, it's fine, tomorrow I'm going to do some cool shit, like, I don't care what she says.
That's exactly it. Right? Like, I think that's also what's lacking for a lot of people, for a lot of men.
And I think once you get there, and then you approach a woman with that in your head, that I don't care if you say yes or no, I'm going to do cool shit tomorrow anyway. She can tell that, and then she's like she can tell that you think about yourself. I'm going to do cool shit tomorrow. Yeah. And then she's like, what's that cool shit you're going to do tomorrow? I want to hear about that. Yeah. What do you mean you're doing cool shit? You don't even care if I say no? You think your life is so good without me, right? I
don't think that's always the case with women in general.
No,
but, like,
I'm not saying
there's always like, I think the one person that's
to me, it's the attitude.
It is, yeah.
It's about the, like, I'm not saying like
the attitude
she
is
can't
what
read your mind,
exactly, yeah.
But she can feel that attitude coming from you, that you think you're hot shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because, like, you're like, I know, I know I'm gonna do cool stuff tomorrow. Yeah. Right. I'm gonna go to work and I'm gonna crush it. Like,
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point, right? And also, like, that also gives you a good body of work, right? Like, if you have that sort of life, if you've built a life that is, I think good on its own terms, separate from the other individual that you want to date,
yeah,
I think you would reach a point where you have the stories you can tell. You have the things that make you sexy to another person beyond just, beyond just the fact that you want them. You know what I mean? Right? Or like beyond just even looks, right? I think people get too married to this idea that, you got to like, do this thing, that thing, yada, yada. I think it's just like, if you want to lift, you lift.
Yeah.
Great. Right. If physical body is like the way you kind of get things going, great. But
honestly, I think
if you have
any dude watching this should try lifting.
Yes.
Oh my god, it's been phenomenal for me.
I gotta start lifting, man, again.
Like I think I started lifting for girls, and then now like the mental health benefits, the confidence benefits.
Yeah.
Like when I come back from the gym, I feel like hot shit, like unbelievably, like it's so good. Right.
Right now, I just meditate. That is, I think generally men need to have pick one or both, right? But you got to work something out. You got to work out your brain, or you work out your abs.
You got to work out both,
right?
Sushil, please.
You know what? I agree with you. Because like that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
But man, it's just the suburbs. Getting to a gym there is just a fucking pain in the ass.
Yeah, that's
right.
Fair.
But that's my own problem to deal with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can't give people advice go lift, but I can give people advice go meditate.
Yeah.
Right. Because like that's been super helpful for me at least.
Yeah. For meditation, like I feel like when I started, it was very... Like, I didn't know where to go, and I went to some app, and it was fine. But I think, I think we need better ways to show people how to meditate. Because I think there's a lot of cool esoteric shit behind meditation. Like, you can have psychedelic experiences, and, like, you can... Like, you can do a lot with it, right? But I feel like the apps don't do that.
The apps don't do that, man. Like...
I know you gave me like somewhere to go with it, but like that wasn't like as complete as I think like actual meditation is. Like it doesn't go. They didn't take me into the depths of like like where they're like fucked up shit with your mind. Right.
The thing about meditation that is completely it's severely undersold to Western society.
Mm-hmm. Well, now there's apps like selling it, right? There's a lot of...
There are apps selling it, but these apps are telling you that you really do need guided meditations.
Yeah.
I think guided meditations, personally, if you do them, great. I think they're a cope. I don't think the guided part is necessary. Because
that's true.
Because the thing that's I don't think explained well enough as far as meditation is concerned. Is that it is very specifically an exercise for your attention mechanism in your mind. So your capacity to hold attention and direct attention in the direction you want it to, that is primarily what meditation strengthens.
Well, I think that my understanding is there's a bunch of different meditations, and some of them do that, and some of them do like other crazy shit.
Here's the thing. They do other crazy shit, but you know how like... when they're having you, the most basic meditation they teach is just watch your breath. Yeah. Right? And they tell you that, your mind is going to wander, but you want to focus back on your breath. Yeah. So the way to reason about that is that the act of consciously directing your focus away from your thoughts or emotions back to your breath, that in itself is the exercise. Yeah. And if you do that enough times, that strengthens your capacity to redirect your focus. Yeah. Right? And your focus and where your focus is, that is the attention mechanism. And if you do that enough times, you can separate that focus almost entirely from your thinking brain and your emoting brain.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
And so...
And that's when it gets psychedelic.
Exactly. That's when it starts to get psychedelic, and that's when you can start
that makes sense
focusing on meditations that are more focused on
I don't know if that's
very
specific.
specific.
Sense to people listening.
Exactly, right? But but essentially when people say, you know, oh, you got to meditate for two or 3 months, and then eventually you just honestly, like, it's a very, very bad sell, because it's a thing where you have to do it for at least 8 weeks, and then
but it did happen to me. Yeah.
But like,
I remember you were like, just keep going. Ramsey.
You keep going, and then you wake up one day, and your thoughts and emotions are no longer directing your life, right? And that's because I don't know how you would explain it, but as I would explain it is, once you are able to gain control of your attention mechanism and control it with your own will, which is what meditation helps you do, then your thoughts and emotions don't guide your life anymore.
Yeah.
Right? They don't grab you, they don't grab your focus anymore, and you don't get sucked into the vortex of your mind yelling at you, your anxiety yelling at you, your depression yelling at you. I don't know how you would explain it to somebody that's hasn't even started yet.
I think that's similar. I don't know if I'm where you are yet, though. So, like, I don't think it's been as permanent of a change for me. Maybe I'm just a little closer to where you are than I used to be.
Yeah. But generally, I think that's what the whole reason you focus back on your breath. And, you know, anybody listening, I do want them to understand that it is exercise for your mind, to get your mind under control in its totality so that you can just get on with your life.
Yeah.
It is similar to how, you know, lifting, I guess, calms down your brain.
Yeah.
Right? Because in some ways, lifting is also that meditative experience, right? You are, you know...
That is, you're very focused on
focused on one thing,
yeah.
right? And this is kind of the same thing in that regard.
Yeah.
Except this one creates, you know, more neuronal pathways, I guess. Yeah.
Alex, how far are we at?
We're at 58.
58? Okay, we'll do like a little, like another topic so we get an hour out of it totally.
So I think you guys covered the first three, kind of.
We did.
Do we want to switch to Trump?
And
what the creative side projects?
You know what? Here, I got something.
All right, let's go for it.
Sushil, I want to go back to what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about like figuring out what you want to do, because we talked about in the date, like a lot of people don't know what to do with their lives, they don't know what's meaningful.
Yeah.
And we talked about in the dating sense that if you're doing stuff that you think is cool, that makes you more attractive.
Yeah.
Right? And it allows you to, like, you know, approach better and date better. But I think it's like, how do I don't think we talked much about how do you actually find that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to ask you the question. I can go off.
I think, I don't know where you're at on the question.
Yeah.
Or on the answer. I think the crisis of meaning, or the lack of meaning, is what leads to that sort of last man syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have meaning. As a result, you're going to go with the smaller comforts.
Yeah. And
a lot of people that don't have religion anymore still grew up in a culture that has, I think, has been thoroughly impacted by the religion, right? And so they lob on to other things like political ideology to give them meaning. Yeah. And I think that's where you see a lot of folks that, you know, I think we're more in the activist spaces, and I think we'll notice how the people that are often the loudest on the internet about, you know, being morally perfect don't really end up showing up to do anything.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's more like, you know, being religious without going to church.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the problem there. And I think that has to do with the crisis of meaning, and I think it's because we have not been equipping people to navigate their own meaning. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because, and there's nothing wrong with the sciences. Science is amazing. It has given us all that we have today, all the abundance that we have today. But I think there has been an over-reliance on rationalism And the reason why I personally think that's a problem is that there's nothing wrong with rationalism, but it is a very left brain sort of manner of, being. And I think our right brain is thirsty for its own, version of its own frameworks of thinking, right? So we have all these frameworks of thinking that are very left-brained, materialist, and able for us to navigate, material reality.
Yeah.
But there are very few frameworks of thinking for the right brain, and the frameworks of thinking that we did have in the past, especially in the West, came from the church.
Yeah.
Right? I was lucky insofar as when I went on my meditative journey, I had, an entire, one of the oldest pagan cultures on the planet to fall back to, which was, all the stuff from the Indian subcontinent. So for me, it was a very, very easy to do, but there's a lot of people over here in the West who completely, they do not like religion. They have very valid reasons to not like religion. I think a lot of I hate to say this about the new atheists, but a lot of them are just a reaction to Western religion, right? But there's that hole that's been left, in terms of giving you, to tools to find your own meaning, right? If you're not going to be using the Christian methodologies, then you just have no methodologies.
What do you do?
Yeah. So the question is, how do we even solve that?
Yeah. Well, that's when you're saying the rationalist brain. I love all this rationalist stuff. But the problem is it doesn't tell you what to do. It just tells you what is.
Exactly.
Right? And I think what it's told us is that Christianity is not, or at least a lot of the foundations of it are not true.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people are you know what? From rationality, that makes sense to me. But then what do I do? Right. Because all it tells you is this is the reality, and then what do I I need someone to give me an opinion on what to do next, right? Not an answer to a scientific question.
Yeah.
Right. I need someone's opinion. What do I do, and how do you find out what your own opinion is? I guess. Yeah. Right. On what should you do with yourself.
And that's the beauty of, right? I think that's the corrupting beauty of political ideologies, because political ideologies are not inherently left-brained, right? They are more right-brained in the sense that they're looking for patterns, general patterns, and they allow you to find meaning in the world around you at the very least, but they don't allow you to find meaning internally. All they really do is give you maybe a set of beliefs that gives you that internal direction in terms of what to stand for. But they don't actually fill in the gaps internally. And so I think the West actually did have a strong intellectual tradition in the past. The ancient Greeks in particular, Plato, you had the older philosophers, pre-natural science philosophers. They and I think modern chemistry was an offshoot from this, or the original alchemy books, right? Yes, they were talking about transmuting lead into gold, but that was a dual. That was a analogy that was both in terms of what they wanted to do with the material realm, right? They wanted to figure out ways to turn lead into gold, but also what that represented was our own inner lead. How do we transmute that into gold, right? And that's what so before, a lot of the old scientists, you had Isaac Newton, you had even geometricians like Pythagoras. You had all these folks that came from the great Western canon of intellectual traditions, and they were just into weird fucking shit, like the occult, because for them it was a very simple heuristic. It was whatever is in the real world is great, right? But I still need my own meaning, right? And so I'm going to be doing the works necessary for anything, right? Whether it is for producing something in the real world, or producing meaning for myself internally, because these are kind of both of them have a symbiotic relationship. I think one thing people don't talk about is the metaphysics that Einstein believed in, right? Or you have a lot of scientists who have really weird and kooky beliefs when you kind of go beyond their published papers.
There really is some scientists that have some weird
right?
philosophical beliefs.
But they're also really good scientists, right? Yeah. So, you know, I think, you know, in Plato's Academy, when he first established Plato's Academy, he said, I think it's like, let none who are ignorant of geometry enter. And the reason why that was there is because I think, don't quote me on this, but in the past, there was no separation between what is shamanic, what is philosophy, what is material philosophy, and what is immaterial philosophy. It was all the same collection of works. But people wanted a rigorous basis for all of it, right? And geometry, formal logic, and mathematics is that rigorous basis for truth-seeking that can be used both externally and maybe even internally if you really wanted to try, right?
I think I'm working on something like that.
Right, exactly. And I think you're working on something like that. But but the point I'm trying to get at is, in the Western canon, there was already a tradition that accepted both, right? And then I think what happened was you had, you know, certain religions come about that kind of cut the left and right brain in half and said, okay, well, all the right brain stuff, you have to use these frameworks we give you or else, right?
Yeah.
And as a result, these past frameworks of metaphysics, of ways to look at, you know, God, universe, whether or not there's a God or not, that's up to the air. Who cares? But these frameworks of finding inner meaning were then brushed aside as quote unquote demonic or incorporated within, you know, Western faiths.
Yeah.
And you can actually see that within the Western faiths, where if you look at Platonism, or you know, from the Greeks, they had in their philosophy, you had eros, you had themos, and you had logos.
Okay.
Right? And if you look at what I think a lot of the, you know, faiths that came, you know, from Christianity and onward, what they try to do is they regard eros and themos, whatever is regarded as eros or themos, has been described by the 7 deadly sins.
Okay.
Right? And then you have logos, which is the justice mind. Right? The mind that is focused on all that is good. Right? So you can even see how the faiths were influenced by, you know, Platonism. Right? But the problem was that they incorporate that internal logic, they give it a different framing, and then I think as people become religious today, they kind of all the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that, you know, you can find the baby if you still want.
So
it's in the rest of the canon.
I think I got a little lost on all the details.
That's okay.
Of the esoteric shit, but Sushil, I do want to ask you for I think a takeaway that like you give to me or someone else of like from all the, you know, esoteric things, the baby that we threw out with the bathwater, for the analogy there.
Yeah.
What are some practical, I think, insights?
Practical insights are.
What would you give me?
What would I give you?
That I haven't heard.
I would give you this. Look at the Renaissance. Look at the Renaissance. It was a time of where both left brain and right brain thinking, where I think were in sync. And that's how you ended up with all sorts of arts and like the precursors to modern sciences that then eventually led to the Enlightenment. And right now, I think we are in a pre-Renaissance era for our right brain. So, you know, the key takeaway I can give is explore these old works, but just remember that do not essentialize them. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? Explore them, do not essentialize them, and remember that modern science is a marvel that you should not throw away whatsoever. Right? And then work with that as a starting point, and then start finding your internal meaning, and then explore these other frameworks, alternative frameworks to religion, because that's the main reason why we have secularism today. Right? It's so that you can find your own meaning and not be locked into any situation.
Do you have a tip from one of those frameworks of like something that someone can do, like, you know, go like a more practical tip that I could like do tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or do next week.
Yeah, the number one tip I can give is to remember that the world and the way we reason about the world is inherently dualistic. So there's always a sort of left versus right, good versus bad, good versus evil.
I guess it's like rational and emotional.
Rational,
right?
emotional,
like I'm using both of those whenever I make a decision.
But we look at the world in terms of polarities, and many people just kind of pick one pole,
right?
And they stick with it,
yeah.
Right?
Like that's not how your brain works.
That is actually how your brain works by default, right?
I mean, like your brain does it does both.
It does both, yeah.
I guess, right?
But the key takeaway I want to give is to start thinking non-dualistically, because that will kind of get you out of a lot of funks.
So like, don't think about only doing one of them. I guess.
Think about finding that middle path between the two, right? And think about that with yourself as well, because there's parts of you that you like and you hate, right? The only way you're going to thread that needle between those two is if you look at yourself non-dualistically, right? If you look at both sides equally and just be like, this is simply what I have, right? And these are the lemons I have, and I must make the lemonade, right? Yeah. But if you look at it dualistically, you're not going to see how you can mix them to transmute the ideal next path.
You gotta accept both parts. Both of those parts.
Exactly. And the only way to do that is to just embrace that non-dualistic way of thinking first. Then you can move past all the things that tell you what you should or shouldn't do, right? That you tell yourself. And instead of, regarding things in such a polarized lens, you can instead start thinking about how to move forward.
I think that's a good place to end it off.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sushil.
Thanks for having me on.